release of Scream 6 this week in theaters, it's time to dive in and re-rank the entire Scream franchise. That gives us 6 movies to rank from worst to best, but the most important part about this list is that while this is my opinion, I definitely want to get your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section, because this is easily one of the most consistent franchises when it comes down to horror, and I know some people have some very varying opinions, so I do love to read those down below. As well, make sure to hit that like and subscribe for more movie and TV content over here on a daily basis. I love talking movies and TV, and if you love doing the same, then you're probably in the right place. So without further ado, let's get into this ranking. Coming up last in 6th place is Scream 3. I don't think this is going to be much of a surprise for many people, because every time I talk to people about what their least favorite Scream film is, everyone typically says Scream 3. With that said though, I don't hate this movie. I actually quite enjoy it still for what it is, but when it comes down to all the other films, this is easily the one that I have the least reason to rewatch. Part of that is one, Sydney. I love Campbell. I think she's so good in the role. She's barely in this movie, but they still try to frame her as the main character here. And every time I've watched and gone back to this one, which is about only 2 to 3 times, it always is the big glaring issue. Now, I know there was some production stuff behind the scenes, but I do kind of wish what they would have done is if, okay, she can't fully come back, let's not really have her in it at all. I know that, again, might be like, oh, blasphemy to even hear that, but personally for me, it's just one of those things that when I go and watch this movie, it's one of the lacking elements of it all. As well, it is lacking a little bit of what Williamson was able to give inside to the entire film within its scripts, but looking at what Wes Craven was trying to do compared to its other predecessors is kind of give this fair balance of sheer terror, but also just meta humor. While its other predecessors were able to do that, this film doesn't really hit the mark all the well. While there are very exciting moments, and here's particularly one of the elements with Parker Posey's character, Jennifer, overall can enjoy this movie for the sense of adventure that it has, but in the end of the day, it's overall a mixed bag when you look at all the different ideas that Wes Craven was trying to do. Cool concept, not the best execution, missing Sydney quite a bit, and also the Ghostface of here is not the greatest. I did not care one bit about his motives. Coming up now, my number 5 is Scream 2. Now, personally for me, this is actually one of my favorite openings out of all the Scream films. I think if I were to do a ranking of all the openings, this would probably be either my number 2 or my number 3. I really dig the entire Ghostface audience and not knowing where this element's going to go and kind of where the sense of dread could come. Well as how many horror sequels typically play out, the meta humor for the entire Scream franchise really works at an all-time high within Scream 2. They drastically mention here is that it's nearly impossible to ever go above and beyond the original. And they don't here. It's still an overall pretty solid and stellar sequel that takes its time to embrace and build upon what we had gotten in the first film. You take over the original core idea of what Scream had set out to be was that horror movies could influence killers, completely create them like Loomis had mentioned. Now as we have Scream 2 where a high-profile news story has really much been taking the wind of everything. Exactly what had happened to Sydney and her friends. Within the movie that is that experience. Honestly for me, this is one of the few movies in the Scream franchise where when I was first watching this, I had zero idea who it could have been. And they do a great game of Guess Who, because within a Scream film, you need a great game of Guess Who, as well as some brilliant and fun scares. You bring in Liev Schreiber here as Cotton was probably one of the most smartest elements you could have brought into here, because clearly a lot of people will be pointing, well, could he be Ghostface? It could be the obvious choice. By the time at the very end when the killers are revealed, this works more after you've thought about the film, specifically on one of the Ghostface. Now, I'm trying not to spoil it because maybe people are watching this who have never seen Scream before. I understand, there are people out there. But the 2 Ghostface that we really much get in here, one is very much film obsessed and does want to prove that point. Horror films can influence killers. The other one in here, because we had 2 Ghostface, is more of driven by revenge. Real life events that had happened in the first film triple onto that other one. I overall really dig the finale. The one thing I will give, and the reason that this film is a little bit lower on my list than probably many of you others, is because I didn't fully love both Ghostfaces in here. I like one of them, and I like that one was trying to prove the other theory, but I think that theory and that thought, again, works more on thinking about the entire concept than actually just watching the film, and it's looking at it on both a deeper meaning and even the surface level. It's kind of just there, and I wanted a little bit more of it and to them explore that a little bit more, but once we get to the reveals, I was like, oh, okay, I wish the build-up was a little bit stronger there, if I was being honest. At least on one of them. The other one, the revenge one, that one worked. Coming up at my number 4 now is Scream 5. Now, I'm going to be flat out honest as saying this, is that I love this movie. When I first initially saw this one back last year, I thought, yep, this is my second favorite Scream film. Now, upon rewatches, I did go back, and I remember even at the time of making that ranking, I went back and forth with which one was going to be my number 4 and which one was definitely going to be my number 3. And I'm going to be honest, this has kind of changed my feelings specifically on thinking about it, but talking about Scream 5, I think this is still a perfect legacy sequel. If you're looking at what legacy sequels are about and the way that they kind of come up in terms of bringing back older characters and bringing in newer characters, the one thing that I can say about this film, and I think after watching Scream 6 is the one feeling that I do have for it, and the reason that this actually dropped a little bit on my list, is because by the end of this film, I didn't fully love the main characters. Like, I liked them because of the actresses and actors playing them, but I didn't love them. I wasn't attached to them like I was the original core 3, and that's where we're going to talk about Scream 6 in a little bit, but they make you love those characters. In Scream 5, I enjoyed their characters, but I wasn't fully invested in them yet. And again, this is only the first film, but if we're going off the first original Scream film, I was instantly in love with Sidney Prescott. I was instantly in love with the rest of those characters. And that's the one thing missing from here, I think. And overall, again, interesting characters, interesting backstory specifically on Samantha's character, which I loved how they were able to bring that in. I love the opening to this entire film, specifically how Jenna Ortega just gets completely messed up by Ghostface. And in the end of the day, I know not everyone loved the reveal, and maybe the reveal was a little bit predictable. I loved where they went with it. And of course, with every Scream film, you do need that meta humor, and touching on the requels and how sequels like this work and legacy sequels and bringing back the old characters, all of those elements very much worked. And while again, maybe a bit too on that nose, I loved it. I kept eating it up, and the way that they kind of brought it about, and the fact that the motives of the killers are literally people who are like the type that say like Last Jedi ruined Star Wars. I'm not saying like if you think The Last Jedi ruined Star Wars, I'm not saying that you're gonna end up being a killer, but I genuinely mean that like that was like the extreme nature of what they were trying to go for here, and I loved it. It made so much sense in the terms of everything. And I know this film was mostly being used as a passing of the torch of some sorts, but when you look at every little aspect of this, they really give the main cast and, of course, the original cast some great stuff to do. I love the whole finale. Me and Gail are very much able to work together in here, finally, it feels like. And even, of course, Dewey does get his dues, and very much a depressing one at that. Or shout out to Jasmine Brown, who plays Mindy in here. She very much gives the celebration of this franchise the dues that it deserves. Specifically in her one speech scene that kind of summarizes the overall thesis for the film. Again, maybe a little bit too on the nose. I ate it all up. It comes down to meta humor and meta touches on it. Scream 5 touches into each and every one of the aspects that you want it to do, and even more. And now my number 3 is Scream 4. Now this one I remember instantly loving the second I'd watched it. But upon just thinking about it and making it work, and for people's context, I literally watched the entire Scream franchise for the very first time like less than 2 years ago, and I've loved it ever since. I'm actually kicking myself in the ass for not have experiencing the Scream films earlier, but Scream 4 was the one that I think deserved more credit when it came out. I remember when this film had come out, a lot of people just kind of rolled their eyes that they were doing another one, and how is this going to work? And even at the time, I would actually go as far to say Scream 4 is the original legacy sequel, before legacy sequels were even the big Hollywood kick. When I look at this movie, I'm not saying, oh, it's a legacy sequel because it's bringing back the original 3, because it does do that, but what this film tries to do is kind of try to copy the original tone of the first movie. And for about half the movie, you can kind of feel, okay, so this is kind of copying some elements. They're just a little bit older. The original hometown, we're all going back to that nature. And in the same look at it all, it looks like it's a passing of the baton. At the time, I would even argue was still feeling quite tiresome when this film had even premiered. Wes Craven, the genius that he was, downright blew everyone's expectations and completely shifted their expectations and subverted everything by the end. Any standard, if you look at actually the opening kill for this entire film, it subverts every expectation that you could ever expect, specifically if you're one of the first, if this is your first time ever watching Scream 4. The fact that they were able to take their exact concept from the original Scream and modernize it for the next generation just works in such a flavorism that I was really blown away by at the time of watching it. It's continued to stick with me since. I think easily when we look at all the characters in the entire Scream realm, Jill, Emma Roberts' character, might be one of the most fascinating ones, who has a lot of different surprises to her character the more and more you learn about her. It's just a movie that wants to have fun, play on the original tone, and build off everything from the original Scream films, and I could not get enough of this. I think, again, out of all the Scream movies, this is absolutely the one that subverted all my expectations from top to bottom and continued to surprise me all the way up until the credits rolled. We're at my number 2, and at my number 2 is Scream 6, and I've gone back and forth on thinking about this one for quite a bit now, ever since I'd seen the film. I'm very excited to see it again, and honestly, like, looking on this movie, just to kind of get my few issues out of the way, I have a couple little gripes with the film, but that doesn't mean that this isn't just a perfect follow-up to Scream 5. I think this is honestly a perfect movie when it comes down to the horror realm and the Scream realm. My only gripes I have, and this is something that a lot of people will have with a lot of Scream movies, you definitely have to kind of just leave your brain sometimes when it comes down to certain elements of Ghostface's motives and how Ghostface is able to get away with certain things. You just kind of got to go, all right, I definitely need to just, definitely when you see who is Ghostface, you're like, wait, how did you do this, that, and this so you didn't get caught? And how did you expect for this to work in the future? Again, that's such a minor little detail, but it's the only other thing that I can really say. Besides that, I think this film, again, does what Scream 4 did in subverting a lot of different expectations, building off the past, whether it's Scream 1, Scream 4, and pretty much the overall entire franchise, because it does celebrate all of it. If you've seen the trailer, you know they have that giant room with all the memorabilia from all the other Scream films. Also, what I was really impressed with this film is that it is a more grittier take on the Scream franchise, which might worry some people, but I was still impressed to see how they were able to weave the meta humor in there, but continue to give an all-killer, no-filler type of story. The second this film kicks off with its opening kill, which is incredible. I mean, it's really hard to rank some of these opening kills, but this is easily probably the second best one, even upon thinking about it more. I love that opening kill and the way that, again, subverts your expectations for what you are expecting. Scream 6 continues that throughout its entire story, very much taking place only over the course of like 24 to 48 hours. The second that kill kicks off a domino string of effects that really much start to amp up and heighten every single moment that you've ever expected from the Scream franchise, and probably delivering one of my favorite finales of all time. I think what this film does that is so important, like I mentioned earlier, was establishing the core four. Mason, Jasmine, Melissa, and Jenna are officially characters that I love just as much as the original three. That goes as far to say a lot, because I know a lot of people love the original three, but I'm finally on board with the original four. And if you were to tell me going forward that we didn't need any more people from the Scream franchise returning, I'd be okay with it. I genuinely wouldn't care. I actually am invested in theirs. And if Scream 5 was supposed to be the passing of the torch, and this was kind of officially them running with the torch, it works. Whether it's from the writing, the directing, and the way that they actually start to focus on these four is the thing that I was very much in touch with. And I really think Melissa and Jenna's performances are incredible in here. I think they give some of the most nuanced performances in the entire Scream franchise, and again, builds off their past and what's going on within their family lineage, which is very important for the entire story. And I think just, again, the directors knew exactly what to do here. And I think if you're looking at true stars, it is the directors, whether it's through every single Scream set piece that's in here, specifically the one that's in the bodega with the shotgun. That thing in the trailer is great, but the actual moment of it works to such a high degree. The entire thing that I just continue to emphasize is how much I love Scream, and jumping into that, at my number 1 is Scream 1. I don't think anything will ever beat this one. Like, I understand I didn't grow up with Scream, but when you start off with that film, it's just a windstorm of brilliance all the way up until the very end. Whether, again, it is the meta humor that touches and makes fun of the entire horror franchise, or really much just the fun little horror vibes that it does give, and the Guess Who game that it provides you to have with who is the Ghostface. I mean, going into this film, I knew who the Ghostface was, but I still was second guessing myself. I was second guessing myself on who it was gonna be, even though I'd seen clips and scenes for the entirety of my life on exactly who it was. That's the brilliance of Wes Craven and Williamson at the time of making this movie. The way they're able again to subvert every expectation. Even the opening kill in here, Drew Barrymore, is still one of the most iconic set pieces and one of the most iconic subversions of horror ever. This is the definition of a classic horror movie at its finest, and it's one that contains all those moments. I think people maybe growing up without this film and maybe starting on a different one will have a personal favorite for themselves, because I think Scream 6 is freaking perfect and I love it. But if it wasn't for the classic that it is, that first one, nothing will ever beat this. You will always see this at the top of my ranking, mostly because of what they were able to accomplish with this film. I think when it comes down to this original film, you instantly love the original three characters, whether it's Arquette, Campbell, or Cox. I love each and every one of them, and I think Scream, for me, is just one of the best horror films ever made. That said, though, that is the end of my Scream ranking. Make sure to leave your thoughts again down below. Have you ever watched the MTV show? I personally haven't, but I am a big fan of the Scream films. Recommend the show, or is it kind of just a pile of crap? Let me know down below. Thank you so much again for watching, and of course, until next time, stay classy.